Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Einstein Effect, How the World's Favorite Genius Got into Our Cars, Our Bathrooms, and Our Minds, by Benyamin Cohen, narrated by Patrick Lawlor. Introduction. Einstein tweets, "If the facts don't fit the theory, change the facts. Albert Einstein." Ivanka Trump. When Ivanka Trump shared this famous Einstein quote with her 6 million Twitter followers after lunch on a sunny summer afternoon, she wasn't hoping to make news. It was, like so much of the ones and zeros that zoom across the digital ether, just something to share on a Wednesday. It was an innocent post, but there was just one problem. Albert Einstein never actually said that. And the irony wasn't to be missed. She was tweeting something that was factually inaccurate in a tweet about changing the facts. Fortunately for Ivanka, the internet is flooded with incorrect Einstein memes, so she could be forgiven for finding one of the many misquotes that reside across the web. Indeed, nobody even noticed the tweet, let alone the mistake. That is, until Albert Einstein himself rose from the dead to correct her. At 8:15 a.m. on July 24, 2017, the verified Albert Einstein Twitter account sent out a message to Ivanka. He confirmed that he never said that, and then, for good measure, included a link to a book of official Einstein quotes. It was the mic drop heard round the world. It made international news. The Huffington Post's headline, "Ivanka Trump's attempt to quote Albert Einstein backfires spectacularly." Newsweek declared, "Ivanka Trump misquoted Einstein and the internet loves it." In an age of fake news, this was seen as a triumph. I know this story firsthand because, from my home nestled in the forests of the Appalachian Mountains, I log on to the internet each morning and manage the official social media accounts of our planet's favorite genius. After collecting eggs from my chickens and helping my neighbor milk her cows, I boot up my computer and pretend to be a Nobel laureate. To millions of people around the world, I am the digital avatar of Einstein, my short and kempt hair notwithstanding. Teenagers in India message me for help with their science homework. Physicists in Florida email me the findings of their latest research. Producers at PBS call and ask if I'll promote a new Einstein documentary. It's an awesome responsibility, one which I don't take lightly, because I know that Einstein's contributions to our understanding of science are at least matched, if not surpassed, by his importance as a symbol. That's because Albert Einstein is widely considered to be the first modern-day celebrity. Before Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck, paparazzi were chasing around the world's favorite scientist. They wanted to know the most mundane details about his life. How many hours did he sleep each night? What did he eat for breakfast? Pressmen roared up the plank whenever his ship docked in America, wrote Carolyn Abraham, who published a history of Einstein. A couple of them once fell into the harbor trying to scramble on board. That iconic photo of Einstein sticking out his tongue? That was his way of acknowledging the ludicrousness of his situation. He was a German Jewish refugee seeking asylum from Hitler's wrath. He was famous for his high IQ, for physics and math and quantum mechanics, and yet here he was in Los Angeles, visiting movie studios and tossing bon mot at a red carpet Hollywood premiere with his friend Charlie Chaplin. Nearly 7 decades after Einstein's death, he is still a celebrity. Nowhere is this more evident than on social media, where he has verified blue-checked accounts with nearly 20 million followers on Facebook, more than Tom Hanks, another million on Instagram, and more than 500,000 on Twitter. And I get to talk to all those people each day as the wizard behind the curtain. I am Albert Einstein. Dead celebrities are surprisingly popular on social media. On Facebook, you can be friends with Elvis Presley or John Lennon, both of whom each have about 13 million fans. Follow Marilyn Monroe on Instagram, 1.8 million followers, for fashion inspiration. John Wayne is on Twitter, but he doesn't have much to say. That may explain why he has fewer than 40,000 followers. Yet Einstein dwarfs them all in both size, did I mention the more than 20 million fans, and content. I share roughly 10 posts a day. There's Throwback Thursday photos of a young Einstein posing with his sister, and the famous quotes I post for Wednesday Wisdom. There's also the video I made of an Einstein bobblehead sledding down a hill in a snowstorm, and the countless contemporary science news headlines that are surprisingly related to Einstein's research. Most of these accounts are run by the estates of the dead celebrities, and my case is no different. I work for the Albert Einstein Archives. When Einstein died, he bequeathed his estate to the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. More about that in a later chapter. The archivists and curators who work there are all academics. They mostly help find material for other academics doing research about Einstein. Tweeting is not really their expertise. So that's where I come into the picture. I'm the hired hand who can, on a good day, come up with a clever retort to Ivanka Trump. Keep in mind, I'm not a scientist. At best, I'm a likable idiot. The Einstein family maid once dubbed Albert the dope, so maybe there's hope for me. But I think there's a benefit to not knowing the difference between a quantum mechanic and an auto mechanic. The majority of people who are following Einstein online likely couldn't explain the theory of relativity any better than I could, yet they still feel a connection to this genius. This is nothing new. When Einstein gave a speech to a packed audience at the Kroll Opera House in Berlin in 1930, the headline in the newspaper the next day was, 4,000 bewildered as Einstein speaks. Sure, he represented the romance of the cosmos, but he transcended science. Wharton professor Jonah Berger, author of Contagious: Why Things Catch On, spent years researching the most shared stories on the New York Times website. He found that articles about science and innovation tend to go viral because they evoke a sense of awe. And our brains are wired, and we're inherently inclined to want to share stories of discovery. Awe-inspiring articles were 30% more likely to make the Times' most emailed list. As Albert Einstein himself noted, the most beautiful emotion we can experience is the mysterious. It is the power of all true art and science. He to whom this emotion is a stranger, who can no longer pause to wonder and stand wrapped in awe, is as good as dead. It's this aspirational aha attitude that helps make Einstein, more than, say, John Wayne, so popular online. In my role as Einstein, I don't don a wig and glasses, but rather a digital skin, an embodiment of genius to the masses. When the guy in Great Britain tweets at Albert, little does he know that a short, bespectacled Jewish guy in rural West Virginia is pretending to be perhaps the greatest and definitely the most famous scientist who ever lived. Managing Einstein's social media accounts is more than just posting inspirational quotes and archival photos. People also message asking me to explain gravitational waves, LiDAR, light detection and ranging, and qubits. I kid you not, while writing that sentence I had to look up how to spell LiDAR and qubits. But I have experience being an imposter. More than a decade ago I wrote a memoir called My Jesus Year. A rabbi's son wanders the Bible Belt in search of his own faith, in which I took off my skull cap and crossed the proverbial street to another faith. A lifelong synagogue goer, indeed we had a synagogue attached to our home, I visited 52 churches in 52 Sundays and discovered something remarkable. Hanging out with Jesus actually made me a better Jew. So when I got the opportunity to be one of the most famous people in history, I jumped at the chance to tackle another persona. What I've found along the way is that Albert is more than just a chapter in history. His work lives on in so many facets of our everyday lives, in science, technology, entertainment, and so much more. I merely serve as the tour guide to a planet full of people who look to Einstein as their muse. When I first took the job of becoming Albert, I thought I knew enough about the man to skate by. I could write a list of the 10 most iconic mustaches of the 20th century. Here's looking at you, Mark Twain. What's more, since I had listened to the entire 21-hour audiobook of Walter Isaacson's seminal Einstein biography, I was surely qualified to shoot off some tweets. But what I soon discovered was that Einstein is not someone who merely exists in the past. Unlike other great scientists of old, like Isaac Newton and Thomas Edison, whom we revere but whose discoveries we have largely moved on from and improved upon, Einstein's theories and equations are still as alive and essential as they ever were. Decades after his death, Einstein is still making the mundane magical. So much of the technology we touch on a daily basis, and that shapes how humans see the universe, is a direct result of Einstein's genius. This technology may be invisible to the naked eye, but take a closer look. His work lives on in the form of iPhone cameras and burglar alarms, remote controls, supermarket scanners, laser eye surgery, and in the space program. Driverless cars, DVD players, weather forecasting, and even the search for aliens. It's all thanks to theories hatched by Einstein. His formula to measure the size of molecules dissolved in liquids made it possible to create or improve thousands of consumer products, including better shaving creams and toothpastes. Not to mention the more than 50 inventions he had patented while he was still alive, including an eco-friendly refrigerator that required no electricity. His work on relativity, gravity, and curved space-time enabled the invention of GPS devices, which were first created to guide satellites in outer space, and are now used to tell you when your pizza delivery will arrive. What has Galileo done for you lately? But it's not just his scientific discoveries that continue to shape our world. In 2023, more people know Einstein as an icon than as a theorist. Googling Einstein icon nets you millions of results, including actual emoji of Einstein's iconic face. He's the one scientist that everyone knows on sight. Walk up to any elementary school student and ask them to name a genius. It'll likely be Einstein. Do not believe everything you read on the internet, especially quotes from famous people. Abraham Lincoln. Becoming Albert Einstein has led me to ask some larger questions. Is there a place to celebrate genius in a post-literate world filled with scrolling news feeds of cat videos and Instagram posts of influencers on vacation, and photos of Lincoln taking a selfie? In an age when ignorance is often celebrated, what do Einstein and his big brain stand for? His accessibility as a genius, not to mention his own popularity on social media, gives Einstein entree and relevance to an entirely new generation. That's the point of giving him an online presence long after his death, to keep his spirit of discovery and drive for knowledge alive. As the voice of one of the planet's most respected minds, I sit at the crossroads of Einstein the celebrity and Einstein the scientist. My job is to continue to build Einstein's popularity, but not just for celebrity's sake. The articles I share with millions each day cover cutting-edge science and new discoveries, many of which are directly related to Einstein's own work. But there is so much more of the story to tell. In his 2018 book, The Death of Expertise, Professor Tom Nichols wrote how, in our age of unlimited knowledge, where answers are just a Google search away, the internet is actually making all of us a lot dumber. Sure, we no longer need to memorize the numerical value of pi or the capital of North Dakota. Google's vast servers can store that information for us. It's 3.14 and Bismarck, in case you were wondering. But that shift in our cultural mindset has produced a downside as well. Many, in fact. That glut of readily available information has created the feeling that we have less of a need for actual experts, not to mention an increase in those who like to call themselves experts. For example, asked during the run-up to the 2016 presidential election whom he turns to for advice on foreign affairs, Donald Trump famously cited himself. The internet has given us all free Gmail accounts, but it has also birthed the likes of 4chan and Reddit, online message boards that are littered with the detritus of misinformation, conspiracy theories, and bogus science. Anti-vaxxers and flat earthers can now easily find comrades in their own self-created filter bubbles, magnifying and emboldening their views. At the same time, we've seen an alarming increased notion of anti-elitism and anti-intellectualism. Career State Department officials who have spent decades in the trenches are now no smarter than a troll with a Twitter account. Pulitzer Prize-winning journalists are being accused of writing fake news. Coalesce all of these disparate threads, and we can ask ourselves a proverbial question. I call it WWED. What would Einstein do? What would Einstein think of all this, especially when it comes to the universal search for knowledge? How would he react to a 2020 law passed in Ohio called the Student Religious Liberties Act that allows students to give incorrect answers on a test if giving the correct answer is against their religion? Put simply, a student could write a wrong answer about evolution or climate change and still ace the test. Einstein was deeply philosophical and famously open to questioning our assumed presumptions about the world. But when it came to facts, he spent a lifetime trying to prove his work. He would likely not take too kindly to those sowing doubt and spewing misinformation. He was not one to stay silent and keep his thoughts to himself. He would be the first to mock the anti-vaxxers with a pithy tweet. Indeed, he reportedly once told a friend, "If you think intelligence is dangerous, try ignorance." That's why I've decided to go on this immersive quest to find the modern-day relevance of Einstein, my own unified field theory of Albert. This journey will take me across continents, from the United States to Israel and Japan. I'll stand atop the world's largest telescope, become an Uber driver, and meet a man who built a time machine, all to show how Einstein's theories are weaving their way into our daily lives. I will interview dozens of Einsteins, including not one but two Rabbi Einsteins, and spend months tracking down the last remaining physical vestige of Einstein, his brain, stolen from his body by the pathologist performing Albert's autopsy. Spoiler alert, it's kind of squishy. In an era when we are flooded with information and misinformation, and we don't know whom to believe, the celebrated mind of Einstein is needed more than ever. He is someone we can all believe in. But even beyond the man himself, our landscape is replete with modern incarnations of Einstein, scientists, artists, and those in a whole host of other fields who are inspired by the greatest mind of the 20th century. In their own ways, they are each continuing Einstein's legacy, not just with their work, but also by becoming new sources of inspiration for the rest of us. Like Einstein, they look at the world with a sense of curiosity and a desire to ask questions. Those key ingredients are often what's missing in our national dialogue. Einstein is not lost to the annals of history only to be read about in dusty classroom books or plastered with a quote on coffee mugs. His theories and his worldview are as alive today as they ever were, and his quest for deeper understanding should be a call to arms in our age of short TikTok videos. Managing the official social media accounts of Albert Einstein is not your typical gig. He is a larger-than-life character. Indeed, he was Time magazine's Person of the Century, ahead of the likes of MLK, FDR, the Beatles, Princess Diana, and Gandhi. Einstein would want that popularity put to good use to make us all scientists of some kind or another. My role is as an Einstein evangelist, and I preach his gospel every day. My goal is to infuse others with that same curiosity. Many already look to him as a symbol of genius, but they aren't always connecting that with how vital Einstein's spirit of inquiry and dedication to science are to our everyday world. I want listeners to experience that same sense of wonder so many budding scientists and veteran experts have for Einstein, with the hope that it inspires them to be more vigilant and questioning with the information they find online. There have been more than 700 books written about Einstein. It's like trying to drink from a fire hose, Dr. Fred Lepore, who wrote one of those books, told me. Why do we need one more? Sure, I get the question. But isn't it the same as asking the executives at CBS why we need yet another cop drama? Each one, in its own unique way, adds something to the canon. What follows is my own quixotic quest to discover Einstein's invisible hand impacting the modern world and showcase the wide variety of people who are inspired by him as they make the discoveries and advances of tomorrow. Stealing Einstein's brain. We should take care not to make intellect our god. It has, of course, powerful muscles, but no personality. Albert Einstein. The day I held Albert Einstein's actual brain, I threw up. To be clear, I didn't heave from seeing the brain. We'll get to why I threw up a little later in this story. Indeed, the brain itself is, in some ways, a thing of beauty. Sure, it's been chopped up into more than 200 pieces, wrapped in gauze, immersed in alcohol for preservation purposes, and stored in several mason jars. Some people use mason jars to drink artisanal cocktails. Others, apparently, use it to store the greatest mind of the 20th century. Einstein looked like everyone's beloved grandfather, but his brain looked like stale pieces of cauliflower. Some bits were just floating freely, bobbing around much the same way Einstein himself did while sailing, one of his favorite pastimes. This organ had spent 76 years inside the cranium of perhaps the most important scientist who ever lived. The cerebellum that gave us E=mc² was right here in front of me. Perhaps it held the key to wisdom, to genius, to life itself. These jars containing the last remaining physical vestige of Albert Einstein were not, as you might imagine, kept behind lock and key. Nor are they stored in a climate-controlled exhibit at a fancy museum, or in the archives of a prestigious university. The day I saw the brain, it was in the back of an Acura MDX. So there I was, with my head inside the trunk of a mid-market SUV, peeking at history. Someone driving by could have easily thought I was buying stolen electronics from a low-level mobster. The mason jars were, thankfully, not just rolling around in the trunk alongside groceries and jumper cables. I mean, the guy driving around with Einstein in the back of his car is not a Neanderthal. The jars were placed in a decades-old cardboard box, stamped with the logo of the Kauai Citrus Association. It used to hold oranges. Now it contained Einstein's brain. Across the side of it were the numbers 55-33, scribbled there in marker to denote the year 1955, when Albert Einstein, upon his death that April, became the 33rd autopsy performed at Princeton Hospital. And that's where this sordid tale begins. The doctor who conducted Einstein's autopsy stole the brain. And here I was, decades later, staring right at it. The last words of the intellectual giant were lost to the world, the New York Times wrote when it broke the news of Einstein's passing. The only person at his deathbed, Mrs. Alberta Roselle, the night nurse, said he mumbled in his sleep several words in German that she did not understand. I'd like to think he was telling her the key to the inner workings of the universe, now forever lost to history because Roselle had failed to learn a second language in high school. Albert Einstein died at 1:15 a.m. on April 18, 1955. Dr. Thomas Harvey, the pathologist on duty that day at Princeton Hospital, began his autopsy shortly after dawn. He took out different organs for examination, and, as was routine at the end of such a procedure, Harvey went for the brain. Literally. He took an electric saw to Einstein's scalp. If you were walking down the hallway, it would have sounded like someone was cutting down a Douglas fir in the next room, or sawing a man in half. Harvey would also use a mallet, tweezers, and his own fingers to eventually wrest the brain from the cavity of its wise owner. To me, it was obvious that the brain of this man should be studied, Harvey would later recall. It was the biggest moment of my life. At 11:15 a.m. on that warm spring morning, there was a press conference on the hospital steps. Dr. Harvey, dressed in a crumpled lab coat with a pen in its front pocket, told the crowd of reporters that the death had been caused by an abdominal aortic aneurysm, describing it as a big blister on the aorta which broke finally like a worn-out inner tube. In other words, an aneurysm had burst in Einstein's stomach, causing internal bleeding. He had first complained of belly issues years earlier in 1948. Doctors discovered a grapefruit-sized bulge in his abdomen, treated it as best they could, and warned Einstein that it would eventually burst without invasive surgery. "Let it burst," Einstein told them, and 7 years later it did just that. While Harvey was outside speaking to the press, Einstein's ophthalmologist, Henry Abrams, rushed downstairs to grab the eyeballs from his famous patient, as if it was an anatomical yard sale. All items must go. Abrams did, in fact, abscond with the eyes, which now, all these years later, are rolling around in a bank safety deposit box in New Jersey. At one point, Abrams was apparently offered $5 million for them by none other than pop star Michael Jackson. But I digress. At 2 p.m., Einstein's body was taken from the morgue to the nearby Ewing Crematorium in Trenton. As per the scientist's wishes, his body was burned, the ashes scattered in an undisclosed location. The last thing Einstein wanted was for his grave to become a celebrity tourist attraction. His life's work would be his legacy. In death, he wanted some peace from the adoring crowds. That peace, however, would not last long. 2 days after Einstein's death, Harvey announced that he would assemble a team of outstanding medical men to study the brain at a conference the following week. Harvey wanted to find out if there was something special about Einstein's brain that made him so smart. But Otto Nathan, who managed Einstein's finances, was a trusted friend, and served as the executor of his estate, was furious when he found out what Harvey had done. He did not want the brain of his beloved client and friend to become an object of fascination, the very thing Einstein would have despised. Nathan wanted, as he wrote to Harvey, the wishes of the deceased and family to be properly respected. Harvey had no money to set up such a conference, and the ghastly exercise never took place. Meanwhile, Harvey photographed the brain from every angle, and then, for the sake of science, chopped it up, dissecting it into 240 blocks. He further sliced some of the parts into wafer-thin pieces to create 1,000 microscopic slides of the brain tissue for further study. The slides were then put into 10 small pine boxes. There were still plenty of blocks left, and the remainder of those went into mason jars filled with alcohol to help with preservation. The jars started off in Harvey's Princeton office. Then he moved them home, where they rested on the mantel in the living room, and eventually ended up in a box in his basement. Harvey's harebrained idea to see if he could ascertain the basis of Einstein's genius by examining the actual brain tissue was not entirely insane. In the early 1900s, anatomists were already ascribing musical genius to the unique qualities of the brains of classical composers Beethoven and Bach. In 1929, a neurologist named Oscar Vogt was hired to study the brain of Vladimir Lenin. After slicing it into 30,950...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?